Mary is a monster known as the Blood Fiend. Blood Fiends are experts at disguising themselves as humans, with powers similar to vampires and long lifespans, but they have no fear of sunlight and can move freely in the daylight. Additionally, they are omnivorous and can eat various foods just like humans, which helps them blend in seamlessly. However, Mary still shows her monstrous side by preferring fresh, raw meat. When she dines with her adopted children, she puts on an act, having the chef prepare steaks that are very rare and cold inside. She also makes her adopted son and daughter eat the same food, raising them as if they were part of her own kind. To sustain her long life, every month, Mary takes a human life in her secret chamber at home, using the body to consume what she needs for longevity. But with changing times and stricter laws, frequent disappearances would cause major trouble for her species. So, she has her people cultivate blood sources by adopting children and convincing them to voluntarily donate blood, ensuring a long-term supply. One day, it was time for Charles, one of Mary's kind, to find a blood source. Mary sent her trusted subordinate Kyle and her adopted son Lucas to accompany Charles to a remote orphanage, where he would seek out a child for this purpose. Charles, who poses as a teacher among humans, was to teach there under the guise of volunteer work. He had his eye on a young boy named Jack as his blood source, planning to adopt him later for a steady supply. Suddenly, Charles caught the scent of blood. It came from Lauren's hand. Lauren, another teacher at the orphanage, had accidentally cut her hand while preparing food for the children. Although it was just a minor wound, the blood scent drove Charles to the edge of losing control. Fortunately, Kyle quickly restrained him, helping him calm down gradually. However, Charles had just turned 100 years old and couldn't resist the temptation of blood. So, when Lauren was showing him around the orphanage, he seized the opportunity to abduct her to the hills behind the orphanage. Little did Charles know, Carter was up on that same hill, relieving himself under a tree. Carter worked as a local tour guide, and with no restrooms in the area, he had stepped away from his group to handle his business privately. Suddenly, he heard a woman scream nearby and quickly pulled up his pants to investigate. To his surprise, he soon stumbled upon some women's clothes and shoes. At first, he thought it might be a couple having fun on the hill and even considered recording it on his phone. But then he spotted a woman covered in blood. Before he could get closer to check on her, Charles appeared out of nowhere and attacked him, biting him in the process. Carter immediately fled without looking back. Since he knew the area well, he kept changing directions to throw Charles off his trail. But Charles couldn't risk anyone discovering he was a monster, so he pursued Carter relentlessly, chasing him from dusk until night fell. Soon after, Carter dashed into a rice field, triggering the bird-repelling devices that let out harsh alarm sounds. Charles's hearing was extremely sensitive, and sharp noises like that caused him real pain as a monster. Seeing Charles in agony, Carter didn't hesitate and hurried out of the rice field. He quickly made it back to his car, where his tourist, Allison, was waiting for him. But Carter was too terrified to care about Allison now. He just jumped in the car and drove off, leaving her behind in the area. Allison then called the tour company to complain about being abandoned. The company apologized right away and told her to wait at the orphanage entrance, promising to send another car to pick her up. But before they could give her the specific license plate number, her phone battery died. So, Allison had no choice but to walk the short distance to the orphanage on her own. But as soon as she reached the orphanage gate, Allison saw Lucas putting a person into the trunk of a car. Even though she noticed his suspicious behavior, she was in the middle of nowhere and didn't dare to ask what he was up to. So, she just pretended she hadn't seen a thing and walked straight off toward her hotel. However, as she passed by Lucas's vehicle, she caught the distinct scent of a blood fiend. This confused her. She had clearly seen Lucas loading a human into the trunk, so why would there be a blood fiend smell? Plus, she had never encountered a blood fiend in human form before. But her casual glance back drew Lucas's attention, and he instantly realized Allison wasn't ordinary. She was a fiend hunter who knew about blood fiends. Meanwhile, Kyle was handling the body that Charles had drained of blood. The corpse was too mangled to recognize, but from the cloth wrapped wound on its hand, Kyle identified it as Lauren, the orphanage teacher. Just as he started to bury the body, he stepped on Carter's phone lying on the ground. Kyle immediately figured out that Carter had witnessed Charles's attack and even knew Charles was a monster. To tie up loose ends, he decided to eliminate Carter. Using the hotel name from the key card attached to the phone, Kyle quickly located where Carter was staying. He then cut the power to the building, plunging the whole hotel into darkness. In the blackout, Kyle could move freely, and following his kind's usual methods, he was prepared to kill everyone in the hotel if needed to keep their monster identity a secret. But what Kyle never saw coming was that Allison was staying right next door to Carter. She was the strongest fiend hunter of her generation, thanks to her family's ancient heirloom, the fiend-slaying blade, which could inflict permanent damage on blood fiends. The moment Kyle passed her door, she smelled that unique blood fiend scent. However, she hadn't brought the fiend-slaying blade on this trip, so she grabbed a pen from the table to use as a weapon against Kyle.